For over 35 years, Todd Garner has overseen blockbuster films like Con Air, Anger Management, Triple X, 13 Going on 30, and the Mortal Kombat franchise.
Why are they letting you make these movies?
Join Todd as he shares tips and stories from the front lines of producing in Hollywood.
I'm Adam Sandler.
I'm Rebel Wilson.
This is Jeff Probst.
I'm Kaylee Cuoco.
I'm Eli Roth.
This is Marlon Wayans.
Hey, it's Ed Helms.
This is Shay Mitchell.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin James, and this is The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide.
The Producer's Guide with Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
Todd Garner.
What a combination.
Welcome to The Producer's Guide. I'm Todd Garner. Today we have a slightly different version of the podcast. I'm going to have a conversation today with Stephen Follows, who's a leading film industry analyst and data researcher who works with investors, filmmakers, and studios to better understand how the screen sector functions in practice. His research has been widely cited across the international press, and he regularly advises on commercial strategy, audience trends, and market positioning. Today, I wanted to have him on because together, we created a data set which analyzes the amount of producers on movies throughout history. And when I had Stephen on before, we spoke about the fact that having more producers on a movie didn't necessarily make the movie better, either through Rotten Tomatoes or through commerciality. In fact, it sometimes and mostly was the opposite. And so I wanted him to dig a little bit deeper into that research. And boy, did he. He analyzed every movie ever made, and he looked at the amount of producers on each movie. And he has put that in his Substack at stephenfollows.com. And I encourage you to go look at that article before listening to this podcast, because it's definitely worth a read. And so Stephen and I decided then to break down not only the data that he found, the fact that the amount of producers is increasing almost by double in the last few years, but why is it happening and who is responsible for this happening? I wanted to also get rid of the misnomer that producers are just unequivocally wanting less producers on movies, which is not the case at all. What we want is to make sure that what we do is valued and that people who actually take the producer credit are actually doing the job of a producer. So enjoy this wide-ranging conversation about producing and why are there so many damn producer credits when you're watching these movies. Enjoy. All right, I'm here once again with my dear friend Stephen Follows. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
How are you today? I'm well, thank you. Thank you. Well, today is going to be a little bit different because rather than me interviewing you, I thought we would come on and have a conversation because since our last interview, you and I spoke about the amount of producers on movies. You did this great study that showed having more producers on a movie doesn't necessarily mean the movie's going to be better. In fact, it might even be the inverse of that. The more producers you have, the less well the movie may do in terms of Rotten Tomatoes and maybe even grosses. So I was thinking it would be great to have some data because intuitively, we all can see that it feels like there is a lot more producers on all these movies. When you see these credits in the independent world and bigger movies, you just see that there's just so many producer credits. I thought you and I would try to figure out if that was true. And you being you, went away and you did this incredible research and you are releasing this research to the world. So let's talk about what you found. Why don't you talk about, on a global level, what you found about the increase of number of producers throughout history?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was really appreciative of your suggestion you said, look, go look there deeper. There's more there. And I said, all right, leave it with me. And you did. And I did go away. And you're right. I don't tend to do things by half. I don't know. It just seems like let's do it properly. So I looked at all credits on all movies ever. I just, if you're going to do it properly, right?
Hey, if you're going to do it, all movies ever is a good place to start.
Exactly. And obviously, because, it's worth saying at the top here, we're only talking about movies because producing credits, as everyone knows, are different on television. So this is about movies. And so it was IMDb's classification of a movie. So it's probably not a straight to video, but it would include like a big streaming title or something like that. I mean, those kind of classifications don't change the big picture, but People always ask. So I sort of gathered from multiple sources all these credits, and then I had to sort of standardize them. And I had to say, okay, well, people have got this type of producing credit. Is it this type of, is it that type? Everyone can type, as you know. You can give anybody any producing credit you want. You make up whatever words you want. There's no union. There's nothing to stop you just typing it out. So I had to go through and standardize all of that. But when I did, and I took a step back, most of the credits are in the form of big P producer or exec or co-producer, associate producer, assistant producer, line producer. And so I looked at the numbers, and we all know that more movies are being made now than ever before, certainly since about 2000, once digital filmmaking really hit the big time and low budget filmmakers could just make something. And now you can make, technically you can make a movie on anything, and my doorbell can make a movie, I guess. Not a movie, and we'll come on to that later on. But like the numbers have gone up. So I was interested as to whether that meant more producers or fewer producers. And if you look back at 1940s, there was pretty much most films, 3/4 of films only had one producer of any type, of any credits. So there'll be one person that'll be like, there is the producer. You can see him, and it usually was him standing there. Whereas now, like the average film has about 5 producers, about 4.5 producers. And that's up from 3 producers since 2000. And this is not just big B producers, this is exec producers, all this. So we've seen this massive increase in the number of people who have some form of producing credit on average across movies. And so this was something that matched your intuition, Todd. What's your instinct? We'll go into the types of films and types of producers in a minute, but what do you think the reason is behind this sort of inflation of producer credits?
The reason is harder than the people who are to blame. I guess there is this perception that if you get a producer credit, that you are, somehow more of the boss, or it has some sort of cachet that you are more than just an investor, more than just an actor, more than just a writer, more than just a director, that you are a producer, which from the outside looking in implies I'm more important in this movie. The irony being, those of us who do it that call ourselves career producers, meaning that this is what we do for a living, and this is only what we do, have found, as you say, in the last 5 to 10 years, that amount of producers has almost doubled per movie. We have found that the amount of respect and the amount of grace given to producers has probably plummeted by 100%.
Yeah.
And I don't know if those things are directly corollary, but the idea that even people inside the business have no idea what a producer does anymore. And we're definitely not valued as much as we used to be. There's this misnomer that, creative executives can just do the job, or it doesn't matter as long as someone's on set, or it doesn't matter. That person can just also double as a producer. And which is interesting because you have double the amount of people. And this is, by the way, not statistically, not scientifically. It's an intuition by the members of this group that we have called Producers United, which are 300 career producers, that we feel that we've more devalued than ever. And so I guess it could be corollary because and this is the who's to blame, since so many people are being thrown into the pot, that it just dilutes what we do, right? There's like 50 of you and the movie's still not very good.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell is everybody doing? And so let's switch then to who's to blame for this problem. And the answer is all of us. I'll start with us. I'll start with the producers. We're definitely to blame because we've allowed the encroachment. We don't have a union. 99.999% of the time, you're alone making a deal on the 5-yard line of getting your movie made or the 10-yard line of getting your movie made. And suddenly 6 people want to share your producer credit and your producing fee. And it's either say no and maybe not get your movie made, or say yes and get it made. Again, most people are going to say yes. So we bear the responsibility first, that we've allowed this, that we in our ambition to get movies made, which is, by the way, one of the things that makes great producers is they stop at nothing to get their movie made. So that would include not messing up the whole plot by not letting someone take a credit. So we bear part of the responsibility. Secondarily, again, there is this idea that producing is like a status symbol. So a lot of people, just by virtue of that, want the credit. So that's partly to blame, is that there's this misnomer that, if you're a producer, then you're going to have this great title and you're going to be respected. And you can go out into the world and say, I'm a producer, even though you may not have done the producing job. Actors want to be producers for various reasons. They want to control their own destiny. They want to, they don't want to just come and say the lines. They want to have some control over they want to develop their own projects. They want to put themselves in movies maybe they wouldn't. Totally understandable. And by the way, if they do that and they're there and they do the job of the producer, they absolutely deserve a producing credit. But as you pointed out, there's been many times where actors didn't ask for it, didn't realize they got it, were surprised when they got it, didn't care. Yeah, hope that sounds good. That's a vanity credit. Great. I look more important. Great.
Yeah, it was interesting that there's little shame about that. Like, we have this idea of stolen valor for things like people who are wearing medals. And quite rightly, I'm not disagreeing with that. And I'm not saying that they're of equal importance at all, but I'm saying that the concept exists. If you wear some kind of uniform or some kind of recognition on your body that you were part of a risky thing in life and you weren't, we quite rightly judge that quite harshly. And yet, I think an actor would be like joking on the sofa of a show saying, oh yeah, I got a producer credit and I didn't do shit, which I think is actually the line that the actress in question said. I kind of feel like, I'm not suggesting it's anywhere near as serious as wearing a uniform when you don't deserve a uniform, but I do think there should be a little bit of shame, shouldn't there? I mean, that particular actress was sitting next to Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie's a producer.
Margot Robbie's the producer. Well, and yes, for sure she's a producer. And you point out in your article, Robert Redford, Clint Eastwood, Danny DeVito, Brad Pitt, they're producers.
Absolutely.
And they deserve the credit. They define what a producer is. So I think that more actors are wanting to control their material, wanting to control their own destiny. That's fair. And that's why I think also another reason why that there's more producer credits. There's the investors that want to have their name on the movie as a producer because they put money in. I personally think that's the wrong credit to get because, again, it's diluting the pool of what a career producer actually does. So if you invest in the movie, perhaps there should be a credit called investors. So you actually are thanked for the job that you did because the movie couldn't get made without you.
Well, you have that in the other arts, don't you? Like if you give money to the ballet, they don't make you the CEO. You and 40 other peoples don't become, the CEO of the British Ballet or whatever. You get like your name on a seat, and that's great. I mean, not if you're Timothée Chalamet, he doesn't want that, but everyone else like, oh, my name's on a seat. That's awesome. But you don't get made like, oh, now you're the COO. Like, that's crazy.
The other category that you mentioned in your article is managers. And I think that managers, there's a whole host of reasons why managers want to be producers. They may want to have more control of their own projects. They may want to have more control over their clients' projects. And they feel by getting that producer credit, they can exert more control in that way. I personally think you have way more power for your client by being their manager and not being compromised by having to have like two things you're doing at the same time. One is looking out for your client. Two, also looking out for the financier, studio, whoever that may be, director, whoever that may be. So my personal opinion is that managers have way more power. I don't mean just by being managers. And I think that the managers also, their duties are very muddled with producer duties because the things that managers do also are a lot of things that producers do. So that those waters become muddied. But again, if a manager is actually doing the work of a producer, then so be it. They deserve that credit. But I think a lot of managers want to take that credit for the optics, A, or B, to give the idea or the impression to their client that they're going to protect them. And C, the truth of the matter is the finances of the movie business have become harder. So some managers want to take producing fees to supplement the income that they're losing because fewer things are being made and their clients aren't making as much money, right? And so that's a systemic problem in the business more than it's the manager's fault for taking that credit. That's a problem that we have to try to figure out if we can fix in the business because look, everybody needs to make a living, and I completely understand that. I don't believe that taking a producing fee, especially if it's taking a producing fee from a producer that's actually doing the work, is fair. And those things need to be negotiated on a case-by-case basis. And again, since we're not a union, it is up to the individual to stand firm on that wall. And sometimes that's really hard. Again, if you're trying to get your movie made, it's tough for that to be the reason that the movie falls apart. So the producers are at a super disadvantage there. And then lastly, the writers. And I think that writers want to be producers because they see in television that they are actually the showrunners and they actually have the creative control. And I think that they see in movies that they don't have that a lot of the times. And so they want to be producers as well. And again, if you're just putting your name on that so you can follow through and make sure you just read every draft, that's not really what a producer is supposed to be doing. You need to be doing the producing job, which is much deeper and more extensive than just writing and then reading other drafts. And I don't know that being a producer by name only will actually help you have any power and be able to make any changes or creative, things to the script. So, and then lastly, the lawyers. So lawyers all over town, because of all of these various reasons, and there is this idea for that either you want the credit for cachet or power or control or whatever, lawyers are happy to jump in there and fight for that for you, even if you didn't ask for it. Because it's free. And sometimes they can't get your fee up, but they can either get you a producing credit with a fee. So you're taking some money from the producing pool, which is, again, unfair to the producers that actually are the producers on the movie, but you're getting the fee that way. Or the credit will go and make up for the fee you didn't get because you have this perception that you have this other credit on a movie. And then business affairs, on the flip side of that, being lawyers, they're happy to give it away because it costs them nothing. So look, we're all to blame.
I couldn't agree more. I think that, I spent a good couple of weeks now really getting into this. Like I've got the numbers. You and I have been chatting a lot, Todd, and you've introduced me to loads of other top producers, which has been amazing. And I also know a fair few people myself. And so I've been chatting and I've been trying to understand what's going on. And I think that a few things have come clear through all of these different producers at different levels, at the very highest level and also very successful. I spoke to Gareth Unwin earlier today, Unwin Ellis, who won for the King's Speech. And Ted Hope, who's made more Sundance films than anyone else, as well as indie people. And I think a few things came through. I think that producers do everything they can to make the film happen, to make the art happen. One of my jobs, I think, is communication. And I've put together a YouTube video to try and get this kind of inside baseball story into the public. And to do that, I've got to make people feel sorry for producers, which they should do, but it doesn't sound like it. It's not one of those groups that you see PSAs for. So in trying to do that, I've tried to understand how can I communicate this better to the public? And I found a few things. Number one, getting them better understood of what producers actually do. The actual hard work, the timeframes involved, the uncertainty, and just how self-sacrificing a lot of producers are. Case in point, this credit thing, exactly as you just said. And I think that goes a long way. And I think also if you give people the scenario that, let's say that they've had their job and they've, at the end of the year, that their company has some awards and they did a really good project, or their department that they run did really well, whatever it is, they're at the Christmas party and their name is called and they're like, here you go, well done. Plus also this guy and this woman and this guy. And who are these other people? Well, one is the boss's husband. The other one is someone that the boss met on the bus and, whatever. Like, that would feel awful. And I think the fact that producers are doing it to themselves to make the art happen that we love, and that everyone can relate to the idea of, look, I don't want undue credit, I just want to be recognized for what I did, seems to cut a lot more ice than you'd think. And people are like, yeah, that is an issue. And I can tell you that I can't tell you what all this means on the ground, because only that's something you and your fellow career producers can do, Todd. But what I can tell you from the numbers is two things that I think really are important. Number one, if you have more credits, as in if there are more people who call themselves a producer, it can only dilute the branding of that, the meaning of that, and it can only, that's what inflation is. You print more money, money's worth less. Like, that is 101 of everything of humanity, right? Scarcity and specificity on the one end, and generality and availability on the other. We don't value the things that are general and non-specific and easily available. We value the things that are rare and highly specific. So that's number one. The more credits must be devaluing it just by pure logic of the way humans work. So I think it's fair to say this data proves that it's becoming devalued. And the second thing is, there is absolutely no evidence this is going to slow down or stop by itself. I calculated, I think if at the current rate, by 2170, everyone on the planet will be a producer. Now, I think that might be an exaggeration. I'm not saying it won't slow down at some point, but my wider point is that generally, like, this isn't something that is of a time. Like, there is actually a point where you see a huge inflation of actors getting producer credits, and then it sort of flattens off as a percentage. It's still high, but it was sort of a moment, and then it sort of settled. Whereas the exec producers and generally the number of producers is still going up, and there's no reason to think it won't continue. So if the data tells us, which I think it does, this is happening, this is not slowing down, and this must be devaluing it, then that's over to you and your fellow career producers, Todd, to say, well, what are we going to do about this? Because I know you guys don't want to be a union. I know you guys don't want to shut things down, break deals. That's the antithesis of what your job is. Your job is to make stuff happen. But if you value that at all, at some point there's going to be some really tough conversations about, I can't even suggest what you guys should do, but I would counsel that don't do nothing if you care about this. So either decide not to care, which I think is the wrong conclusion, or figure out what to do. And I don't have great suggestions other than the kinds of things that have already existed, with the Academy after Shakespeare in Love, and also the PGA mark, and I don't know, like those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about you talk about this in your article. You pointed to that, and I think the Academy Awards has a lot to do with everything we're talking about, because Best Picture is received by the producer. That changed from the production company to the producer. That also cemented in people's minds, the producer, it's their movie. And I think that also there was a lot of years of big tentpole movies with big producers' names on it, like Jerry Bruckheimer and Joel Silver and Larry Gordon. And these producers became household names. And I think people are like, oh, producing. Okay, that's something I want to be a part of. And you talk about Shakespeare in Love, how so many producers came up, and you had producers that were fighting, like, the financier at the time, who's since had his own major issues, was fighting for the award, and Crash, Bob Yari, who paid for the movie, went to court to fight that he should have received the Academy Award, and he lost in court on that. And so I think the Academy would have a lot to do with it, that there's this idea that if I become a producer and the movie wins an Academy Award, I'll get an award. And I think that is all well and good. I get that. I get that you see that, and that has that you have this feeling of cachet, but the producing is a real job, and it has real responsibilities. And so from our perspective, what we're trying to do at Producers United is make sure that people understand what that job is. Part of this podcast is so people can understand what producing is. I talk to a lot of producers. I talk to a lot of people about producing, trying to get people to understand that it's a real friggin' job. It has real responsibilities. And in the beginning of the process, when all of these credits are being amalgamated in the deal-making phase, to make sure that when people who want the credit are asking for the credit, they understand what the expectation is from us, that they will be partners from development all the way through distribution, that you don't get to just come on set and do your normal job and get a producer credit. So you said it. Part of it is the Academy, making sure that the number of producers that are able to accept the award are correct and finite, and that they are the actual producers of the show. And number two, the PGA has this PGA mark distinction, which has a very stringent set of guidelines and rules of who can actually get that mark. And so I think that those things are being done also. But for us as producers and as actors and as managers and as writers and as directors and anyone else who wants a producer credit, understanding what the job is and performing those tasks. You don't have to do all of the tasks, obviously. That's why you have more than one producer usually, is, maybe you're splitting those tasks up, but there is a specific set of tasks throughout the entire movie, from development, pre-production, production, post, and distribution, that the producer's duties are very specific, and you need to be available and willing to do those things to get that credit. In the same way, just because if I was a good cook, I couldn't say to my lawyer, I want a catering credit. I mean, it's just like, I'm a good cook. I just want people to know that I'm a really good cook. And but you're not going to go cook the food for the people. I don't care. I want the credit. Like, that doesn't make sense. It's laughable. But by the way, I guarantee you today, someone's making a deal going, I'm not going to do all those things. I just want the credit. I don't want to be responsible for insurance. I don't want to be responsible for health and safety. I don't want to go on scouts. I don't want to deal with all the costumes. I don't want to enforce actors' calls. I don't want to talk to my fellow actors about problems on the set. I don't want to deal with HR. I don't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just want the credit. Is as ridiculous as me saying I'm a great cook. I want a catering credit.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the times there's this misnomer about PU that we're like, we don't want anyone to have credit. We're trying to cut back the credits. Half of that statement is true. We are definitely trying to cut back the credits because, as you say, scarcity makes things more valuable. And we believe our job is very valuable. And we take a lot of care and pride in doing the job. So yes, we are trying to bring back the amount of credits to a reasonable level.
Well, it's just whatever the level is that people have done the work. Like, you're just trying to reflect the reality.
That's it. That being said, do the work and you get...
You're not setting quotas or numbers. And I think that's what is so hard about when someone does try and tackle it, like the Academy or the PGA, it's always really hard because producing is a slightly amorphous job, and some jobs might need one producer, some might need 5. So you can't have a hard and fast number no matter what. But I mean, it actually, some of you will like what I'm about to say, and some of you will just gloss over and think this is just me being pedantic, and it might be both. But it is really important to realize that there's 3 different types of ways of describing the word producing, right? There's a proper noun, there's a noun and a verb, and it makes a difference, right? So the verb is doing, you are producing, regardless of what you're called, regardless of what credit you get, how much you're paid, whatever. If you're on set, if you're dealing with HR, if you're doing that long list of things you just said, you are producing. And that happens the moment you come up with the idea of the movie right to the end of time, when you're still dealing with, collection reports 20 years later, or the rights or whatever. Producing is an activity. It is a verb. And it's also one of the most active ones. You do it. It's not just sitting there looking out over the window, which you could include within writing, but you couldn't include as much within producing, other than maybe a bit of planning. But that's the verb, right? The noun is just a way of describing it. Lowercase thing, it's just like, you are producing, well, therefore you are a producer. That's just some logic. The really interesting one is the proper noun, which is when you capitalize something and you define it, and it stops having its official meaning, and it starts just being a name. A proper noun is just a name we give to something, like Todd or Stephen or whatever. And that's how people are using it. And it's incorrect, because they are using it like it is just some magic words, and it is just an honorific. Like they could have Sir whatever at the beginning of their name, or OBE at the end. Like, they're thinking it has no meaning beyond its own recognition and honor, like as if it doesn't link to anything. But we need to make sure that it feels much more linked to the noun and the verb and the activity. When someone wears a medal that says I was in this war, or I was it's a Purple Heart, that is because it is reflecting something that happened. It is not the end of the story. It is just the signal of the story. And so the more you can do anything to make sure that when somebody gets a credit, it's referring to something else that they did. It's not self-referential. Exec producers in some cases are exec producers purely because they are exec producers. They are famous for being famous. There's nothing else there. It's a, Gordian knot. Whereas most of the time, and hopefully in all the times in the future, when you're saying that person produced it, you're actually not only describing their credit, you're describing what they did for the last 3 years. You could guess where they were. So like, okay, 2 years ago, you were probably on set, weren't you? Like, yeah, I was. Like, that's the producer. The credits just have to catch up and be a bit more definitional. But I don't know I know what you guys are doing, and I think it's awesome, and I think there's more work to be done, and I think you're doing the right things. I don't have any good suggestions, and I feel like it's one of those things that, like one of your best friends works too hard and they are their own worst enemy, and you're saying to them, stop working late. Is your boss making you work late? They're like, no, I just want to get it right. I feel like I don't know how to say to you guys as en masse what you were saying earlier on, Todd, which is that you're doing this to yourselves. This isn't a criticism.
Yeah.
This isn't like this is like, I don't know how to help, because you have everything, it was inside you all along, Dorothy, but it needs everyone to care about it more than they care about their individual movies. And the problem is, you guys care a little bit too much about your movies.
Yeah.
Which is, again, not a criticism. And I can't solve this. I don't know what to propose beyond, everyone working together and agreeing what this is supposed to mean.
Yeah, well, here's the solution. So we at Producers United have a producer's checklist. We have sent that checklist to all of the lawyers, to all of the agencies, and to all the studios. And so everybody knows the deal. This is what real career producers consider the producing job. So if you are giving that credit away, you should be expecting, and especially if you're paying money to people for doing that job, you should be expecting these people to do that job. And if you abide by that, then someone should read this and say, yes, I'm willing to do all these things, right? And I'm willing to do more than my job, or I'm willing to do more than just give money. I'm willing to do this. These things I'm absolutely willing to do. Then fair. Then we can talk about making sure that you get the correct credit. If you look at this list and go, this is crazy, I'm not doing all this stuff, well, then that's your answer, right? And if you're a business affairs person and you're giving away a credit, in my opinion, that's not good practice. And you have proven through our last conversation that having more producers doesn't necessarily make it better. In fact, it's the opposite. So if you're trying to make good stuff, you should try to make sure that you're at least rowing in the same direction as the data. And the data suggests that having more producers doesn't make something better. So if you look at this checklist and say, hey, person A, B, C, D, whoever it is, not being specific, here's the checklist. These are the things we expect you to do if we're going to give you this credit. In the exact same way, if you were a best boy or a grip or the caterer or a makeup artist, you have a list of things you're expected to do. You're not just going to say, you know what? I saw a TikTok. You did some really good makeup. You want to be a makeup artist on the movie? You don't have to do anything. Just put your name. That doesn't make any sense. And they would never do that. They would never spend the money to do that. The other problem is that there's a producer's pot, and 9 times out of 10, they'll say, you guys figure it out. We gave them the credit. You guys work out. It's not costing them any more money, which is bad. It seems like it's good business because you're getting something for free, but it's not, because all you're doing is adding more problems and more confusion in the production of the movie or show. And so if you look at this producer's checklist, it's very easy to say to anybody, hey, I didn't expect that. Wow. Or just educating yourself on, this is what producers do. Wow. That's a real job. Because the other problem we have is kind of a publicity problem, which is twofold. One, when people think of producers, especially like producers that are saying it's not fair and we're not treated well and we're not paid right, it's hard because the impression of being a producer is this big cigar chomping fat cat. We're all millionaires. And I will say that a great percentage of our rank and file membership, who are the 300, in my opinion, 300 of the top producers in the world, aren't employed or having a tough time making ends meet, or really having a tough time right now because we've been devalued so much and our fees have been diluted so much that people are having a really hard time making a living. So the idea that we're fat cats or that we're all living high on the hog and we're just bitching about problems that rich people have is not true. The second part of our problem is if you do your job really, really well as a producer, nothing happens. So it's like we're like wellness doctors, right? If you go to a wellness doctor for 10 years and you go, you know what? I've never been sick. What the fuck am I going to a wellness doctor for? That's the problem. If you do your job really well, the person that's the studio or the financier goes, what do I need you for? Nothing happened. You're like, exactly. That's exactly right. Nothing happened.
Okay, let me give you this is a hypothetical scenario. This couldn't happen, but I'd be really interested in your thoughts about this. Let's say that there was some kind of and again, this is genuinely hypothetical before anyone gets too excited. Let's say that there was some huge study or there was like a big hack of data or whatever it was that made this magical thing happen. And this magical thing is that there was a scorecard for everyone who's produced a Hollywood movie in the last 10 years based on the Producer United scorecard. And all it was is public information. It just says this person, insert producer A, they ticked off 3 of the 7 or 3 of the 10 or whatever, or 1 of the 10. How many people do you think would be embarrassed to have had their credit? If we could actually see everyone's contribution to every movie in some magical way, do you think a large number of people would be embarrassed, or is it just a small number of quite sort of greedy people with credits?
I don't think even people are being greedy. I think they may genuinely believe they're producers because they don't think they even understand. Yes, if they saw the score, I don't believe people would be embarrassed necessarily as much as, hey, I did what was expected of me. I got the credit and I think it's better to go forward and educate people and say, hey, just so you know, this is what a producer does. Are you willing to do the job? And if they say no, but I still want the credit, then they deserve to be embarrassed. And then that's just gross in my opinion. But if you look at it and go, no, I'm down to do this. And let me tell you this, every actor that I've worked with that has taken a producer credit deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
They worked because I communicate with them and I say, hey, I need you on this. Can you help me with this? Hey, I need you on this piece. Can you help me with casting? Hey, I need you to, help me force a call tomorrow, whatever it is. And I've worked with a lot of great actors, Adam Sandler being at the forefront of it. Nobody is a better producer. That dude is one of the best. He's one of my mentors. He's one of the best producers out there. Right. And when I did all those movies with Kevin James, that dude is involved in every piece, going from the inception of the idea through literally publicity, because he's out there promoting the shit out of it, to marketing. I just did a movie with Alan Ritchson, who's a producer on the movie. The guy worked his ass off. He worked his ass off on that movie. And so he deserves the producer credit. And he helped me with development. He helped me with, with getting Owen Wilson. He helped with stunts. Like, he deserves it. If you're, I have zero problem if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do the work, right? I don't know about other people that have taken producer credits other than, the people that have admitted, like, I didn't even know I was supposed to get credit. But like, if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do the work, that's great. That's helpful. That hopefully will make the movie better if you're willing to do that. And so I just want people going forward to be educated, to understand what it is, to not just give those credits away willy-nilly, because it's all in the same vein, which is to just have people understand what producers do, to attach value to it because they understand what the job is and see, wow, that movie was really well produced. None of us can say, oh, the movie was really well produced, so the movie's going to make more money. Right? That's not necessarily the case, because you can produce the shit out of a movie that doesn't connect with an audience. But I think that if a movie's really well produced, where the set was safe, well run, on time, on budget, the movie was delivered to the best of the ability of everybody that worked on it. It was the director's vision was upheld. All of those things. The director had space to be creative. The actors felt safe and space to be creative. That's what producing is. And so that's what I just want people to understand, is this is not like a unilateral, like, we don't like other people taking the credit. All I'm saying is I just want the credit to really mean something. And therefore, as you said, scarcity breeds value, that the people that are actually doing the job are actually doing the job.
And I think there's two things that I would suggest, and I don't. These aren't practical suggestions, but these are areas to look into. Which I think it comes down to consequences and image. So the consequences is one of the ways that I think in the white collar crime space they've managed to try and crack down on fraud and things like that, is to make the senior executives more responsible. There can't be a situation where the people at the top can do terrible things, but then say I was just following orders or just giving orders or I was just in the boardroom. And so I think out of tragedy might come some beneficial stuff. Like, I think the Rust set, for example, Alec Baldwin and people like that saying I was or was not a producer. I don't know about that particular case. I can't speak to it. I'm not trying to. But I'm saying that you can't be a producer sometimes when there's a red carpet and not when there's a police investigation. So it's going to be interesting to think about when people feel responsible for projects. And then the second point is around conversation. And I would love if when someone says, oh, I'm a producer, I would love the response to be, oh, that's amazing. What did you do?
Right.
Rather than like that being the end of the conversation. Because actually it shouldn't be the end of the conversation, because if you say I was one of the writers and you know it was an accredited writer, you know the minimum of what they did. You don't know exactly how they did it, but you know they did it. Or director's a better example. I directed that movie. You know what they did, right? You don't know how well they did it, but you know that they did it. Whereas if they say I'm a producer, you don't have any more information.
No.
Like, that doesn't mean anything by itself. And so I'd love to find, to make sure that people are responsible for things they say they're responsible for. And I would love to find a way for the follow-up when someone is a producer is to go, oh, that's amazing. Brilliant. What did you do?
Right.
What did you contribute? Because I also think that's fascinating. If there are 3 producers and they're all needed, I'd love to hear how they work together. That's really interesting to hear. This person's strength is this person had this like connection base, this other person knows how a set runs. And together we made... when you hear about teams of producers, or you hear about, the 3 Davids that made Harry Potter are so impressive how they sort of work together and all that kind of stuff is the really exciting stuff, I think.
Yeah, well, every producer I have on this podcast works in a different way, and some work in partnerships and some work solo. I just had Sev Ohanian on, who they were nominated for the Academy Award for Sinners, and that movie was produced by Sev Ohanian, Ryan Coogler, and Zinzi Coogler. And it's like those three working together are really, really a team, and they really do different things, and they lean on each other. That's great. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That makes the movie absolutely better. And I think that you're right, like asking them what they did, because I think the other issue is they may say, well, I gave a few story ideas and I said, oh, that actress looked good in her costume and whatever. Like you do a few things, right? To me, by doing a few things and taking the credit is the same thing as, well, I was on set with my Spotify and I suggested, I played a few songs and so I'm the composer now. Like it just, again, you can do some of the things and still.
Hey, maybe that's one of the solutions. Why don't, whenever you next have someone who wants an exec producer credit who didn't earn it, say to them, you know what, you can have it. And I'm also going to make you one of the 2 listed composers. And I'm also going to make you a best boy. And I'm also going to make you the chief makeup artist. You're going to share that credit with these other people. And then you wait a few weeks. And then when those real people find out and they go after this person and they're banging on the door being like, I composed the music. How come you've got this pointless credit? You can be like, oh, it's interesting, isn't it? Not everyone else puts up with this kind of shit, do they?
Yeah. Well, again, that goes back to the fact that we don't have a union.
Yeah.
Right. All those jobs you mentioned are unionized and they would never delve into those waters. Whereas a producer has the problem of A, not being in a union, and B, really being the person at the tip of the spear that is doing everything he or she can to get that movie made. Right. So it's like, it's really, really, really a difficult position to be in because we're not protected. And if we just say, oh, we're just going to rely on the kindness of strangers, that's not going to work.
Call that plan B.
Well, all right. We just have to keep talking about it. We have to keep relying on people like yourself to come up with the data and say, this is a hockey stick to the right. Like, this is crazy. Like, it just makes the movies look crazy too. When you're watching a movie, you just zone out because there's 50 producers on something or 25 producers on something. You just zone out. And I am personally of the opinion of, if you're one of those 30 people that's getting an EP credit that probably invested some real money that meant something to you, and you're very helpful in getting that movie made, you're just being lumped in with someone's brother or someone's dentist or whatever, it's meaningless to you as well. Like, so
yeah, you're losing something of value. You're devaluing it. I one of the things I discovered in this is that I was looking at the early versions of the data, and Todd, I was talking to you throughout the process, and I would sometimes come back and be like, oh no, the previous data was wrong because I found out this thing. And it wasn't that the actual data was wrong. It was that sometimes there was these fringe cases that would pull everything out to the wrong place. There is a film out there, a film from last year, that has 10,100 producers. It is an Argentinian film, and they are almost all associate producers. But I actually did calculate this. At the average scroll rate, that's 6 minutes of scrolling on IMDb.
Wow.
The IMDb page doesn't load properly. It's got too many names.
And I don't know anything about that movie, but I would assume that those people all gave $100 and $200.
Yeah, it's about a $2 million movie, and they all get, so they're micro investors. I mean, it's associate, not main producer, but it's like the fact that it's in that space.
How much better would it be if there was just a credit that said investors and it just listed those people?
Yeah, and it can be great. It can be like, thank you so much. Art and film relies on money, and these heroes supported us. And not only that, they didn't interfere with our creative vision. So we got the best of them and the best of us, and that's why it's amazing. I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of.
No, this is about educating. This is about educating people to what the job is, to what the credit means, to what's expected of you when you do the job, and to take the correct bow or credit or responsibility when you're doing that job. Simple. It's simple as that. And I do think you're right. It will keep hockey sticking up to where then finally, ultimately, that everybody in the world will be a producer. However, I do feel though, as more people like say, oh no, again, if you're a young actor and you want to be a producer, and because you have stories you want to tell and you have things inside of you that want to come out, we need that. Mm-hmm. We need younger people to come up from the next generation to tell stories. That's how you get Boogie Nights. That's how you get these movies like, Do the Right Thing. That's how you get Boys in the Hood. That's how you get these or Fruitvale Station that creates the next Ryan Coogler, the next PTA, the next Spike Lee, the next, Hughes Brothers, whoever it is, because those people started when they were young. Right? Those happen to all be writer directors. But if you're a young actor and you've got a burning story to tell and you're coming up in the world and you're starting to gain some traction and some power, by all means, tell your stories. We need that. We need original stories. We need people, people of all shapes and sizes to tell their stories. I'm all for that. That is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is leveraging yourself in for whatever reason to take a credit that you didn't deserve or, didn't necessarily even want maybe, and just doing it because it's a matter of business now. Because that's, and I would also reckon that if you're a young producer, a young actor that's starting a production company and wanting to tell original stories, and then you're on the other side of it and suddenly 30 people are taking your producer credit, all that hard work and grit and determination of wanting to tell your story and get it out there is then diluted.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just going to keep perpetuating. So we just have to be aware that, the people that are coming up through the ranks are going to experience this as well down the line. And so if we can all work together to make sure that the people that are taking the credit deserve it, that'll be very helpful throughout the entire business.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that I'm really interested to see what happens in the coming decade, because I think it is becoming an issue that people are talking about. And usually that is the first step to actually things changing.
Yeah.
And I did actually, if I could use this moment, I just wanted to say that this whole data project happened because Todd asked me to do this and was like, we think this is happening. He'd seen something in an early study I'd done, but ultimately this level and this depth of stuff was like, no, chase that, follow that through. So if anyone who's listening to this has got any theories they need proved or things they want to check out, or I had a really interesting project a few years ago where John August asked me whether 1 minute of screen time does equal one properly formatted page of script, because we all say it. And the truth is not kind of, but not really. And it was really interesting because it's such a simple question. Now, anything like that, you want me to look into it, you want to see if it's true, you want to try and understand why, or you just want the data to make the case or to check something out, please get in touch, because this kind of, I love this. This is so much fun. And also I've learned so much in working with you, Todd, about this, I can explain what's happening and you can explain why.
Yeah.
And that's only possible when people give me the ideas. I'm unlikely to sit here and just come up with them. So if you think something's happening or you just want to check it out, reach out to me and I'd be happy to check it out and see if that is the case.
You are incredible at it. And again, like I said, it was something that I intuited that we had been talking about, but you can't, until you really look at the data, you can't really analyze what is actually happening. And going to John August's point, like, if you're a fantastic writer and you write a script and then you go and see the movie and it's not like anything you thought it was going to be because it's completely different, I get that frustration. I get if you're an actor being on a set and being not respected, not taken care of, you're going to want to change that. You're going to want to take a hold of your own destiny. I get if you're a director, you're going to want to also make sure that you have power in order to protect your vision. So you're going to want to also be a producer. I completely get that. What I would love is if it didn't have to happen that way all the time, right? That if you're a director, you trust your producer to protect you and then give you the space to be great at your craft. If you're an actor, you trust your producer that they're going to protect you and respect you and give you the space to be great at your craft. If you're a writer, you're going to trust your producer to not completely just go off the rails and make something that you're not going to be proud of. But all those things, we have to work together as a community to make sure that the producers that will do that are the ones that are working on the movies, not just, it doesn't matter. You don't need a good producer on it. It's fine. As long as there's someone there called a producer, we're good. Our executives will handle it. These poor executives have so many things going on at the same time. They can't possibly be giving it the care and the specificity and the focus that a really good producer can. So it's a harmony thing too. It's yes, I understand intellectually why people want the credit and want to be producers, but I also hope that we can get the business up to a place where good producers are doing those things and protecting you, where you don't feel the need to have to be the producer on everything. That you can have the space to be doing the job that you're primarily really, really gifted at doing. And so these things are all kind of working in tandem, and it's not like we're just trying to say we're the only producers. We get the reality, but we also want people who do the job to be great at it, to train, to really understand what it is, and to really respect what we do.
Well, thank you again for the support on this project and the genesis and the explanation. Hopefully, I've got an article that's come out at the same time as this podcast. I've also got a video on my YouTube channel, which is the Film Data Scientist, which is much more for the public, a bit more anarchic, but we'll see an interview with Todd in there as well. And if anyone is a journalist who wants detailed data and things like that for their piece, just get in contact with either of us, and I'm happy to share it.
Yeah, and if anybody is curious about what a producer does, there's about 178 other hours of this podcast.
Yeah, listen to that. Then send Todd questions if he hasn't covered it.
Yeah, but if people are curious about this producer's checklist and what career producers expect of people doing the job, you can go to producersunited.com and pull that up and look at that. It's a really important job, and it's a job that I love and I've dedicated my life to, and I just want other people to respect it and to understand what we do. And if you want to do the job, fantastic. That's great. Learn how to do it well and dig in and do it. I think it's great. More people that are doing great work, the better. And Stephen, you do great work, and I really, really appreciate you bringing this to light. It's an important topic, and hopefully we can all kind of work together and sort of reverse this trend and get back to closer to what was in the 40s, if we can.
Lovely. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of The Producer's Guide. If you're a fan of this podcast, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. And if you got any questions about producing, send me a DM on X at Todd_Garner. I want to thank my producer, Steve Delamater. And until next week, I'm Todd Garner. See you then.